this whole industry is bigger than anyone in this room and anything that's happening out there. It just made me realize that, again, you need everyone, not just one.
A mindset built on unity and teamwork. Probably the sign of a great leader, and that is the sign and voice of our latest guest, who just so happens to be our association's great leader this year. And might I add, not because he's sitting right next to me right now, but one of my favorite people in WTBA, one of the first people I actually met back in 2022. Yes, we are road tripping once again. Welcome back. I am Lane Kimball, joined by our executive director, Steve Boss. Hey, Steve.
Lane, if sucking up were an art form, you would be Vincent van Gogh with that introduction. Yes. My goodness.
With 2 ears, though.
Yeah, with 2 ears. That's right. But indeed, it's great to be back road tripping with WTBA. And it is great to have our board president this year, Mike Hahn, with us. It's been a whirlwind getting Mike on, and he's had a couple board meetings under his belt, and so we thought it would be a great time here at the beginning of summer and as we head into the heat of construction season to sit down with Mike and learn a little bit more about him, introduce him to a broader public, and talk a little bit about his journey. So thanks so much for joining us, Mike.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. And Lane, thanks for the introduction. You were like a little sheep amongst wolves there. I had to come and protect you because, it was first day on the job and had to introduce you to everybody.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was a good thing that I met you the first day or not, but no, you and a few other people stand out truly in my mind of being very welcoming and just, hey, tell me about yourself. Let me tell you about the association.
Since I must have been doing something else, I've got to hear the backstory here. Tell more about this first day of work and Mike Hahn experience.
So it was my second day on the job. First day was a Monday, and then Tuesday was a board meeting and our holiday party as well. And so did the board meeting, sat next to Dan Grasser, of all people, who is another one of my favorites. And he was great. And he's like, after the board meeting, everybody's milling around ahead of the holiday party. And Grasser's like, let me introduce you to a few people. And literally Mike Hahn was there bellying up to the bar. And so I sidled on up and said, hey, I'm Lane. And not knowing you from Adam at that point. And you were super friendly, super nice. I remember talking to you about your Miami project down with Lunda and whatnot, and talked to you for probably a half hour or so.
So what were your first impressions of Lane?
It was good. I mean, I think it was about time we got a little bit better technology awareness. Your introduction at the board meeting was great. And I know what it is to stand in some of those rooms where you don't know anybody. And you just need one icebreaker, one moment with somebody to connect, make you feel comfortable, let them really understand what the industry's about and what we're there for. And I hopefully, obviously, maybe did that for you, Lane. You can tell me.
Did.
But
yeah,
that was the goal, and I think you've taken off and you've flown well, especially sitting here doing a podcast now.
So let's take that theme a little further. You had a lot of first days, be it in education, in occupation. Tell us a little bit of your backstory, Mike, where you came from and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, I actually grew up in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Graduated in the class of 2000. Last high school there before they tore it down and built a new one, so I got to see the last school there. I decided I was going to go into engineering and decided Madison was it. Bust. You got to go. And I was actually going for industrial engineering when I first committed to college. And that was my thought process there was to, just change, have something of passion, like, hey, I want to fix process, I want control, I want to adjust things, I want to help process. Well, got into Madison first year as an introductory engineering program. Never intended to go to construction right away, right? It was one of those things that just sort of happened. But the introductory class, we were tasked with building a bridge over the Yahara River, and there's a couple of representatives from DOT in there that had been guides for the class. And
an actual bridge, or is this like
an actual bridge?
Okay.
Yeah, it was. It was intro to engineering, and each group was tasked with coming up with something that helped industry in some form.
Did the people realize that the bridge they were going to go across the Hahn River with was built by wet behind the ears introductory engineers?
Let's hope not. I think hopefully we were vetted out at some point.
Okay. Is the bridge still standing?
I don't want to go over it myself, but no, it probably is, obviously. But so that was the group that I was tasked with, and bridges weren't in my mind at that time, but it was coursework, and I was going to tackle it head on. So I started, the process. We worked with the professor, worked with the industry, They kind of gave us some tasks. We took them and ran with them. Professor at the time, he came back to me after that, and he's like, hey, you did a really good job with the process and how everything went. And you think differently than a lot of the other guys in the room. And would you ever consider going to work for the DOT? And I'm like, well, I'm a freshman. I don't really know yet, but sure, I guess I'd consider it. So a couple weeks later, he came back and he said, hey, there's a spot open for a set student or part-time during the summer if you want to do an interview. So gave it some thought, and I'm like, yeah, what do I got to lose here? I'm just riding along. So I still hadn't changed my major yet from industrial engineering to civil or construction even. And I got my call to go and interview, and so I went out and interviewed, and sitting in the waiting room, and there's some juniors, some seniors, and here I'm the lowly freshman. So I'm kind of like, wow, this isn't going to go very well for me. But we had the interview, and shortly thereafter I got a call back, and they said, hey, we want to bring you on for the summer. And I was like, all right, that's pretty good. So through some correspondence and over time, I kind of asked one of the questions you always got to ask is like, why did you pick a freshman who had zero experience in this versus a junior or a senior? Sure. And it's something that resonated with me is they said, well, if I hire a junior that year, I have him for 1 year. If I hire you as a freshman, I have you for 4 years. I'm like, hey, that's a really good point. So it's something I think about when we look at internships and how we can value that and the repeat customer. And if you pay for the learning curve, you want to try to keep that going. So that was actually a really good learning experience right out of the gate.
There was no transfer portal back then.
Yeah,
so they knew they had him for 4 years.
Yeah. So you started at WSDOT now, and for the folks who maybe listen to this who aren't familiar with you, you work for Lunda Construction. Tell us a little bit about how you went from one to the other, and kind of that professional journey, and a little bit about Lunda.
Thinking back to my time at WSDOT, that was in the Bureau of Structures, so your central office, which I think was a pretty good position. I worked with some titans, Finn Hubbard, Dave Genson, Bill Dreyer, Phil Sia, a lot of these guys that had been in there a long time. They took me under their wing. They helped me with the process, got to know these people for 4 years. When I went to graduate, the state was in a hiring freeze. So they said to me, it's like, hey, we want to keep you, but we just can't. And so then that sort of set off my journey of, well, what's next and where do I end up? I had done a lot of this design side. And so through the process of working for the DOT, I did a summer internship over on the Market Interchange with the Southeast region. Yeah. And I helped with constructability reviews. I met, some more titans, Dan Rivers, Frank Rivera, Dave Wynn, several others. Ryan Luck was over there. And these folks, again, just helped me walk through the path and introduced me to new sectors. Let's say the consultant world was there. They had a lot of projects that were going on already, kind of developing. So I happened to be in the parking lot one day, and one of the consultants came in for some interviews, and they said, hey, this guy's going to be looking for a job. You got anything for him? And so I talked with a couple of those folks, interviewed along the way, and circled back, and I ended up working for FIG, who was the construction engineering inspection lead on the north leg. Not to fast forward too much, but we finished out that phase of the north leg. Worked for FIG for that entire duration of the Marquette, went up to run the Fond du Lac bypass project for them in the Northeast region. My thought process at that time was I needed to be on the building side. That was the first time I really decided, like, I need to switch from design, oversight to actually managing work, being able to make a change, make a difference. And after that Fond du Lac bypass, that's when I sort of started floating out some ideas of possibly working for a contractor, right? It was time to get it in front of it rather than, I would say, behind it, or not necessarily in total control.
When you say floating out ideas, like literally sending out your resume to various companies, or how did you approach that?
No, not actually. I mean, again, it's through relationships. Everything we work on is relationships. So I was actually sitting on the Bridge Technical Committee and had been introduced to a lot of the builders in that room. And on occasion, that's just how you meet people. You start having conversations, and some of them resonate with you. And one of the gentlemen just said, hey, I'd like to interview you, come in for work. Would you ever consider it? And I said, no, it's not happening. Not doing it. And then at this point, now several years later, I thought to myself, I'm going to reach out and call them. So I reached back out to Lunda and I said, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you guys have available? So that's where I kind of sat down and started the interview process with them. And it took me a while, honestly, to kind of find the right fit. So I went back to my mentors, which were at the WSDOT at the time, and Finn Hubbard was one of them. I asked, and I said, hey, Finn, I'm in a really perplexing spot. I work for WSDOT, work for a consultant. I don't know construction. What am I doing? Like, am I making the right call? And I remember vividly at that time, Finn said to me, he said, there's a few great contractors in the state, and Lunda is one of them, and you should strongly consider it, right? So that was good advice. I mean, obviously, I think there's a lot more he would have presented in front of me, but at the time I was presenting the Lunda option to him. So like I said, that resonated. I said, okay, well, if Finn thinks it's a valuable opportunity, I'm going to at least consider it. So sure enough, interviewed and made the change and have started the journey in construction.
How many years ago is this now that you joined Lunda?
That was in 2008.
Okay.
So,
18 years then.
yeah, and I
did
started
quick mental math.
Yeah, I started off doing design, construction engineering for them. I helped manage a couple projects, and shortly after that, they said, "Yeah, you're not sitting behind the chair anymore. We got to get you out in the field and start managing projects." So my construction engineering time sort of faded off, but I was able to do some of my own design work for some of my projects, which was awesome because you could do basically everything on the job, schedule it, design your false work, and then see it built. So that was a really cool transition into the construction world.
Tell us a little bit about Lunda itself. Bridge company, obviously, but it's more nuanced than that, I'm sure. Tell us, what is Lunda? What do you guys do? What do you specialize in?
Yeah, Lunda is a bridge builder. We were founded in 1938 by the family, a company, the Lunda family.
Always based in Wisconsin?
They've always been based in Wisconsin, Black River Falls. You know what? Lunda's been around and they've been doing these heavy highway jobs. We've been a great bridge builder. They've started on small structures, and we've grown to massive, large projects. And we've proven over time that we can build bigger and better as we move forward with technology, people, and just the ability to manage our work. So while we have the bridge division, we also have a railroad division, a pipeline division, and then a specialty service division. That's also a division that I actually oversee with a great group of people. But in that division, we look at wastewater treatment facilities, dams, earth retention systems, foundation work. I would say anything that's not a bridge, we kind of land in that specialty services division.
We have a lot of road contractors. You obviously, the one thing you didn't say that Lunda does is build roads. So how is that your sector of the industry different from the other contractors, the ones who are doing the horizontal construction on the roads?
Well, that's a really good question. It's funny you say that because for the longest time, my wife thought I built roundabouts, and we'd had some good conversations about, no, it's just bridges. She goes, why don't you build roads? I said, well, we don't know how to build roads yet. We're not there. But I think the reason why we don't is because of the way Wisconsin's set up. It's a great industry, right? And there's a lot of people that do that very well. It's not something we're set up for or accustomed to. And we rely on partners in this industry. They rely on us for a bridge. We rely on them for the roads. And it's a very good relationship. And I think as an industry total, we do a good job of staying in what works. And that's where I think Wisconsin is successful, is we have a lot of small companies and a lot of large companies, but we do things very well, and we're not going to do them unless we can do them well.
Yeah, and not to get too far in the weeds, but I think a lot of people who listen to this might not understand the collaborative nature of the work you do and of the projects that the Department of Transportation does around the state. Can you just briefly get into it a little bit? You say there's a project, the Marquette Interchange. It's not just one company doing one thing. It's a whole group of companies working collaboratively. How does that work?
The simplest form is the threshold in the contracting department. You need 30% in order to be the prime. So depending on the scale of the job and the outlay, it could be a bridge job that's a prime. It could be a paving job that's a prime. It could be an earthwork job that's a prime. So we're very flexible in either being the prime or the sub. And I think that's what helps us drive the competitive nature in Wisconsin, is that we are willing to do both scenarios. We don't always have to be a prime contract. You don't always have to be the sub. There's opportunity out there for you to do both.
I think something else cool about not just Lunda, but some of our other members have this experience too. You've gotten the chance to see a lot of really cool things, not just in Wisconsin, but around the country. Again, we talked about that port project in Miami that you were working on. Did you ever expect that going into it, that, gosh, I'm going to get to see some really cool things in places I might not otherwise have gone?
No, never, honestly. I've always gone into things with the mindset of get done what you know you're doing, right? Like, you have to have something that is in front of you that you can do. And if an opportunity presents itself, then you take it. That's just kind of what I've lived by, is so when opportunities presented themselves, we captured them, right? We're not going to say no. Like I said, I believe we're one of the better builders in the entire Midwest. And I don't think there's anything our guys can't build, men and women combined. So when these things pop up, I'm not going to say no. We're going to go tackle them. That's what we've proven over the last several years, is that we can build pretty much anything.
Yeah, one thing you didn't say no to, and we're certainly grateful for it, is involvement and participation in WTBA. And maybe talk a little bit about how you decided to get involved in WTBA and what the value of that has been and what you've learned there.
Another funny story I would say is when I first came back over to Lunda, we had some conversations. I went to one of the CE conferences early on, and it was just sort of introductory. Hey, Mike, why don't you go talk with these people? And on the drive home, my boss, who was Joe Quist at the time, he said to me, he's like, man, Mike, you know a lot of people. How do you know so many people? And I just look back at that. It was because of my time at central office. It was because of my time on the market interchange with FIG. And just having met these people on these larger jobs gave me that opportunity to meet them. So that was my first experience with WTBA. And after that, then I was invited back when I went to sort of this construction mode. And I just started to learn and understand the business a little bit more, the relationships that everyone had. And I found a lot more value in building those relationships with folks that I didn't know within the WTBA community.
Now, you started with WTBA Tomorrow?
I did. Shortly after I started coming to these meetings, there was an opening on that, and Larry Lunda asked if I wanted to partake in it. And again, not saying no. So said yes, and I went, and Kevin Tross was in charge of the WTBA Tomorrow, so we learned a ton of stuff underneath his leadership. At first, it was like drinking from the fire hose. You're never going to learn what this guy knows. But he pulled it back for us and did a good job making us understand really what things were and how the industry functioned.
You know, one thing that you probably didn't expect when you entered the industry and entered Lunda is working on something like mental health. And, you know, we had the privilege of being up just a couple of weeks ago to a great event you do with Lunda on suicide prevention and mental health. How did you get involved in that? How did the company get involved in that?
We had started the charity golf outing, the Lunda Cup, 7 years ago, I would say, at this point. And we started off with different charity types, and we would rotate through the process. We landed on mental health because it is something that impacts our industry significantly, and most people don't realize it. You know, everybody thinks, construction, it's macho, it's manly, it's very aggressive, but I think they miss the fact that you're away from your family sometimes. It's hardworking conditions. People don't necessarily get what actually has to be done in the day-to-day life of a construction worker. And so we said we need to give back to people and show that you can have a softer side and an understanding side of mental health and talk about it and bring awareness to it. So we shifted to that, I think 4 years ago now. We've been donating that to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and we split it between two chapters, Minnesota and Wisconsin, and that's because obviously we have offices in both Minnesota and Wisconsin. And the Lunda Cup we hold in River Falls, and that's because we like to see a joint effort between both our locations and bring suppliers together from Wisconsin, bring suppliers together from Minnesota, bring employees together from both those states. And that's sort of how it's built. And we've become known for having some great raffle prizes, some fun times through cold weather, some warm weather. In fact, this year was the best weather I think we've had in a long time. But this year, I think we're going to hit our record. We're projected to be over $65,000 this year, which is nearly double.
It's like double the previous year.
Close to double from the previous year. So people showed up this year. Maybe we're getting a little bit more traction. I think as an industry as a whole, we're understanding what mental health really means to employees. So I think that's helping the cause, and we're going to continue to push it forward.
This is not to call out other companies because so many of our members do similar things. But do you wish, given the position that many of our companies are in, that we did more of that kind of stuff, that more of those events that are focused on a specific cause and to help others and to give back?
I wouldn't hold it against anybody to try to do something similar. If they think it's great for the industry, and you do see it. It is coming around across the industry. So whether it's our golf outing or something similar, just giving back to those that you can provide for is the way to improve the industry. I mean, for instance, we're actually doing another outing. We started it last year. It's called the Lunda Clay Classic, which is a sporting clays event, and we hold that on the eastern side of Wisconsin to try to a few more people engaged in Wisconsin that can't make it to the River Falls event. And there we actually are donating that proceeds to the Fox Valley Veterans Council. So again, another industry that probably doesn't see the appreciation that it should, and that's our veterans. And we had a veteran employee that brought up the idea, wanted to take it on, and I said, sure, go ahead, take it, run with it. It's great for our people. It's great for the community, and we get to give back.
You know, now you're giving of your time and your talents as the WTBA Board President for this year. Any things in particular that you're looking to accomplish, or that a year from now, when you hand the gavel over, you'd like to say, you know what, this is a mark I left on the organization?
Apart from the goals I set out there at my acceptance speech in February, I think it's just we can have fun together. We can have a good time. It's not always serious. We know what our mission is, but it's about relationships and getting to know someone, and it doesn't always have to be the business side of things. So if I can leave that, hopefully I bring some energy, some positivity to the industry, to our association, to realize, hey, we can do this together and have some fun. Now, going back into the goal side of things, I think I had set out that said we wanted to sign off the design build law, which, hey, that was an easy check the box. It was pretty much done before I took it.
You got that done almost before you took the job.
So there's a lot of work that went into, obviously, the prior presidencies from JR and Dan and everyone else that had dealt with that. So I got the easy button on that one. Talked about safety, which I think you guys as an association done an incredible job coordinating with WIS. Lane, yourself. I mean, the stuff you've been putting out on social media for that has brought a ton of awareness to our industry and how dangerous it is on the roads for our employees out there. So thank you for that. And I think that's not really measured milestone, in my opinion, that I can say, hey, I did that. But that is just, again, an awareness situation for the industry to be able to say, hey, we are doing something to make it better for what we have. Potholing, is another one that's out there that I said we want to try to keep tackling. But some of these, are maybe not one-year term type problems.
One of the priorities you started with that I want to flesh out a little bit is you talked about the collegial nature of the association and how, we can compete like cats and dogs, but, we're one association. Talk a little bit about how you've seen that over the years in WTBA. You are a presence at almost everything, be it fundraising events, be it social events, be it, task forces and things like that. Talk a little bit about kind of that bigger mission of WTBA and how you've engaged in it, why you've engaged in it.
I actually owe some of that to Jeff Parisi, probably. When I was on WTBA Tomorrow, he was one of the individuals I got to work with closely. And his energy when he came on, he presented, he was very charismatic. We all know him quite well, right? And I just thought to myself, like, that's a guy that you want to be like, right? You want to bring that energy. You want to bring it to, you need something to bring people together. And I oftentimes, I believe that high energy and just charisma is what kind of drives some of those together. So I bring that forward is because I think that you need something. You need a common driver. And that's what the WTBA is about, right? It's about all of us working together to get the mission done. And yet, like you said, we can sit across the table and bid days and fight and push and be mad at each other because you didn't get the job or you got the job, and we can cry about it. But when we step into that room, in the boardroom, we're all on the same team, and we start talking about the problems of the industry and how we make it better. Some of that's funding, and the funding side, I look back, it really relates to the people. When I say people, it's not the people in the room, it's the people that work for all the companies within the association. If we don't have the funding mechanisms to fund transportation, we can't provide jobs. And to me, that's probably the primary reason I fight hard, is because of those jobs that we all need and provide for our families.
Speaking of funding, one of the best ways, most impactful ways that we as an association can help impact that with lawmakers is through our PAC, the WTBA PAC. And we have a handful of great events throughout the year that we're now growing and expanding. And I think I've featured you on at least 2 of the recap videos.
Unfortunately.
Not just because you're a great interview, but also because you show up. You go to all those events and, you're contributing your own personal money to that. Tell us about that investment. I mean, for some people, they say, that's great, but I can't do that. And you're always there. Why is that?
I think it just goes back, again, to being there, right? If you want something done, sometimes you got to show up yourself and do it yourself, right? So you need some trendsetters. And I oftentimes say, hey, if I go there and I start the trend, if I'm on the front end of that, people will follow. And the PAC fundraisers are a great choice for that, right? So, we want to do our part. And oftentimes I'm not one of these guys that's out cutting checks for this person or that person. I like to keep a lot of that to myself and who I'm voting for, what my backgrounds are. I don't really dive in the political arena personally to that extent. So I like to be able to provide for the PAC, again, because that goes to the greater good of our entire industry. And by doing these fun events like that, you're actually getting a value out of it, right? So we've done some ice fishing events, some pheasant hunts, and at the same time, we have provided for that PAC.
Before we run out of time, do a little bit here we call the lightning round, and run through just a few quick questions for you that give people a little more insight into who Mike Hahn is. So, lightning round, favorite movie?
Man, that's a good question. I love movies. I could cite several of them, but I'm going to go off of the ones that are running on the track at the family house right now. Number one that consistently shows up is Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Nice. Yeah.
Ultimate classic. And like I said, the other one that shows up on our family reel is probably Major League. Some great one-liners in both of those, and you got to use those moving forward.
Not favorite food, favorite comfort food specifically.
I got to go with spaghetti.
Most memorable or your most often repeated quote?
All right, I'm going to go back to high school. I had a German teacher. His name was Herr Koloff. And he was
destined to do one thing. And
that's
that was
right.
To teach German.
Yeah. And his comment was always work hard, play hard. And I don't know if he picked up from someone else or if he just coined it himself personally, but it always resonated with me. And I think that's what stuck with several things through my life. You got to get out there, you got to bust it, and then at the end of the day, you're going to go home and have some fun. And I share that, like I said about this association, is we work very hard. Everyone in the industry, but we have fun together. We have fun, as members, and so it fits that mold too. So it's not something, prolific, but it's something that resonates with me.
Coolest project you've ever worked on?
I have to say the I-74 Mississippi River crossing in the Quad Cities. That was probably the highlight of my career for sure. We had taken a bunch of people within Lunda from separate divisions and kind of molded them into that project down there. We hired a lot of new people, and I built a ton of relationships with the folks on that job, and I would not have built those relationships had I said no to that project. It was one of those times, it was a several $100 million project, very difficult, unique. I think it's still the longest basket handled arch in the United States. And you don't get those to come across your desk that often. So when that opportunity presented itself, I said, yeah. And then, like I said, it's one of those, you had to leave your family for 3 years or possibly more as the expectation to get down there to go build it. But sat down with my wife and she said, hey, I got you. And I said, all right, well, let's do it then. I'm going to go. And we did it. And like I said, that you get down there and we built all these cool relationships. There's folks that I didn't even know worked within Lunda because I was in my little pocket, let's say in Northeast region. When we got a chance to bring folks in from all these from Minnesota office, from our Black River Falls office, our Milwaukee office, and really get a chance to work with them side by side, I really developed some really strong relationships with those guys.
So we'll stay on the bridge theme. Bascule bridges or vertical lift bridges?
Yeah, that's a good one, Lane. They're both cool, right? Yeah. You don't often see movable structures. But I'm going to say, you can just lift things straight, and it's pretty easy. So I'm going to go bascule.
All right. Which you did a cool project. The only reason I know about those is the one up in Menasha that you invited me to. So good choice.
Yeah. There's a little bit more complexity, though. So it's you like a challenge.
So we're recording this after you've just ground through a multiple-hour board meeting. And as the board chair, we're looking forward to your term. But at some point, you will cycle off our board. I imagine it's not the 2 to 3 hour board meetings, but what will you miss most when you are no longer in your chair?
It's going to be the relationships, really. It's a chance to talk with folks like the two of you sitting here, but everybody else that's on the board, and just that feeling of coming together as a greater good to get something done that's going to impact our industry. That's going to be probably the biggest thing I've missed.
Mike, what's one thing you're willing to share that few or no one knows about you?
Oh man, pretty transparent, but I gotta say I'm in a quest to join the 1% club. And now you may think that is from the financial perspective, but there's a couple ways to do it. Professional athlete, not even close, right? It's not going to happen. I could win the lottery. That's not going to happen, right? Chances are. This podcast could go viral, which could maybe there.
Well, that's probably your best bet.
Yeah,
right,
so
right there,
out of those three, it's pretty good. But
you'd be influencer.
Right. But what you don't know is that actually, believe it or not, there's only 1% of the population that can fly in an airplane. So last year, I decided to take up that quest, and I've got my hours in. I did a ground school online, found an instructor, and have been trying to tackle a few hours here and there throughout the past year. And now I have all my commitments in. I passed my written exam, and now I have to figure out how I'm going to get proficient and pass the practical exam.
Captain Mike. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being so generous with your time today. It's great to let people know a little bit more about you. It's been a pleasure of ours to get to know you better and to have your leadership and robust participation on the board.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Said hopefully we go viral and we're going to get you to number 1 yet.
1%, baby. Yeah, we'll get there.
So thanks all of you for joining us on this podcast. I hope it's been as interesting for you as it has for us. And remember, it doesn't matter if you're building a bridge, if you're flying a plane, if you're working your way up in the industry, or if you're leading an industry association, it all begins and ends with a road. And that's why we're pleased and proud to have Mike Hahn as the board chair for the Wisconsin Transportation Builders Association. Thanks again, Mike.
Thank you guys.